Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Our topic today is the prophecies say that DJT will return. Now, when I'm talking about DJT, you got to understand that I can't say some of those words on some of the platforms we're on. But that's, in fact, what the prophecies say. The prophecies say he will return. Now, before I get into the rest of this today, let me just say, so what is wrong with this? You say, well, it's a piece of bread. You're right. It's a piece of bread I took out of this loaf. This loaf is a 1 pound loaf, and there's something missing from this bread. Even though it says it is whole wheat, there's still something missing from this and almost all of the bread you're eating. See, the story was in 1860, the smart humans decided that they were going to outstrip God and that they could figure out a way to where the flour would not spoil, because once you break the wheat berry, then it begins to spoil, and in 7 to 10 days, it's got mold. So they figured out how they could be smarter than God. We're going to take out the outside shell and then the wheat germ. We're only going to use the white powder part of the wheat. And that doesn't spoil. And they're right. You can put it in a bag. 5 years later, it's still there. But then, of course, there's something else they removed. And that is most. Now, not all, but most of the nutrition. So then they had to pass all of these laws saying you got to put niacin, you got to put vitamins, you got to do this, put all of this into the... So why not just use what God made? So the difference between this and what I made is this. That's the difference in my bread, whole wheat bread, versus what you buy in the store. The bigger slice here, this is actually cherry, cinnamon, honey, and vanilla mixed together. And I made this. So when you make your own homemade bread, you can make it flavor any way. You want jalapeno, you got it. You want to have seeds, sesame seeds, however you want to, you can make it. But the big advantage to making your own whole wheat bread is that it's probably the cheapest way to have long-term storage food, because most of your long-term storage food companies cost $9,000 to $10,000 per person per year. But at Joseph's Kitchen, they can show you how to feed your family for about $1,000 per person per year, and it's whole wheat. Okay, so what is whole wheat over the regular wheat? Well, you remember the 7 years of plenty followed by the 7 years of famine of Joseph and the Pharaoh. Well, that meant that the whole world lived off of wheat for 7 years. Now, I don't think that maybe Jesus said, man should not live by bread alone, meaning you should have other things that you should eat. However, about the closest thing out there that'll feed you not only good tasting, but also nutrition for your body is wheat. And so we recommend you go to josephskitchen.com. When you go there, you got to get 2 things. One is you have to get a machine package. That's the items that you need to actually physically make the bread. It's a wheat grinder where you put the wheat in. 30 seconds later, you have flour. You put it into a bread machine with 6 other ingredients. Push a button, 2 hours, 20 minutes later, you have a nice, hot, steaming loaf of wonderful, that you made, whole wheat bread. Slice that up. The slicer's even included. The beakers, everything. It's everything you need to make bread. Then you decide how much food you want to have. You want to have food for 6 people 1 year, 4 people 1 year, 2 people 1 year. You place your order, and they have it in stock. Because most of these long-term storage food places, they're out. Some of them are 2 or 3 months. Some of them are even longer behind in filling their orders. But at Joseph's Kitchen, they can ship within 2 or 3 days. And they ship around the world. Go to josephskitchen.com. I'm telling you that the prophecies say there's about to be a food shortage. And if you want to listen to what God's trying to warn us about, then you'll get this long-term storage food. All right, now, back to our topic today. I've got several prophecies here that says that DJT will be returning. Vicky Parnell, 8/31/22, says, I dreamed our U.S. economy collapsed. People were panicking. Others were committing suicide over financial losses by jumping from buildings, by driving vehicles off cliffs, etc. Our nation was in desperation and has stayed this way for some time. Now, that's a key. So do you have preparations so you can stay in the four walls of your house for at least a month, or maybe 6 months, or maybe even a year? Maybe there's some kind of pandemic out there. Maybe there's martial law out there. Maybe you can't get out of your four walls of your home to be safe. Our nation was in desperation, and has stayed this way for some time. The length was days, weeks, and a few months. People were destitute. They were on the streets, no homes, no jobs, because there was nothing to pay anyone with. In other words, the death of the dollar, and we've been talking about that lately too. Unless you bartered for what you needed. Well, for you to barter, you have to have something to trade. Barter stations were set up, like flea markets. Those who prepared could barter and had many items to barter with. Do you have items to barter with? Others had nothing. The foolish, who knew to prepare but didn't, were in worse dire straits than the ungodly. But they had watched the signs moved to action by the servants of God with their understanding to prepare so your little children would be able to barter with something for their needs. The government was still intact, having hoarded gold and silver, but the presidency, and here it is, presidency had changed hands. And now we were governed by a woman president. Now, stay with me, this is important, who set about to destroy our nation even further by signing one executive order after another. She was undoing as much good and creating chaos as bills and laws were changed, so that no one clearly understood any of the laws and bills. So she just signed an executive order, and the laws are coming out so fast, making our heads swim. Nobody knows what to do. The lawyers that were connected with the government or who had their own ability to stand up and running were furiously trying to determine the rights and laws of the remaining people. Even the law officers who were left. Robbery and murder escalated. Rape and promiscuity increased. America will be a nation in total chaos. While disaster and plagues are hitting us and our world, illnesses, new and old, were running rampant. And then everything froze. And I heard a voice say the words I cannot say. She cannot say the words she heard. Then the dream begins advancing again in slow motion. I see the White House. I see an exchange of power. The woman, K.H., and her aide, her helping her hand, I'll let you read the words there. E.D. I won't say the name. But I see her name above her head. She is an older white woman with brown hair, and they are being removed from the White House. Our nation is in chaos. The citizens pay very little attention to who is in the White House until an announcement goes over the nationwide that a king, let me tell you who I think the king is. I think it's referring to DJT. Remember that Dmitri was told that the fall of America would start with an internal revolution in America, started by the communists. Some of the people will start fighting against the government. The government will be busy with internal problems. Then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, and 2 other countries will attack and defeat America in 1 day and 1 hour. So great riches will come to naught. And there's more, but let's go on here. The citizens pay very little attention to who is in the White House until an announcement goes over nationwide that a king has returned with armed forces in tow. That's the internal revolution, in my opinion. A king has returned with armed forces in tow, and the announcing of all that he has done is publicized. When the public finally realizes what's happened, happiness is felt for the first time for many who are not saved, and even some who are, for the first time since the economy collapsed. Some held us king as our savior. Some don't care, while others go deeper into prayer, realizing exactly what this really means. It really means a time of war coming to our nation is now upon us. It means that is the internal revolution that was spoken of or spoken to Dmitri Dudin back in 1984. So when DJT comes back into power, most people will say it's a good thing. And I believe it is a good thing briefly. So in my opinion, this guy is a good guy. Now, he's not Jesus. I'm not saying he's Jesus. But I think he is at least trying to straighten some things out. And I also put this into another program, 120 of 2021. You can go and look that up and listen to that program. Here's another one, 8/5 of 2021. These are other programs I've talked about this. So if you want more information on it, you can go there. 8/23/22, the King and Queen, Vicky Goforth Parnell. And this little lady seems to be really hearing from God. She says, a king, a king, a king to fall has fallen. I think it's talking about JB is either dead at this time or he is really already dead. A lot of people say he's already dead. This is just an actor. A queen shall rise for a moment of time, KH, according to several other prophecies. Before the rightful king, DJT assumes his throne, his seat of power. It's time, a rejoicing for some and an uproar for others. Some of the people start fighting against the government. A moment of false peace before terror begins upon your once great nation and world. All will hear this announcement upon the winds of change. The king is dead. Now, I think it's saying that we don't have long before this JB guy is out of the picture. Now let's go to the most credible source I know, Henry Groover. I met Henry Groover back in 1989 in Omaha, Nebraska. I've had him in my home many times. I knew Henry. I knew his wonderful wife. They've both gone to be with the Lord. I can tell you many stories. I know that when Henry Groover says the Lord spoke, the Lord really spoke. He said, I opened the door to see DJT and his wife, dressed like a king. His wife is carrying his shawl on her left arm, made of gold tweed with big royal jewels in it. Mr. DJT, to what do I owe this honor of your visit? And he said, oh, Henry, never mind. We're family. This is just a family visit. I just came to see you. He sits, and his wife puts his shawl over his shoulders, and it drapes down in front of him and stands beside him. You see, that's respect. He's getting respect from his wife. He's a king. He's not a president. Why? Because a president has limited powers according to what the people give him, what the Congress gives him. But a king, like King Nebuchadnezzar, whom he would, he slew. Whom he would, he kept alive. That's the power of a king. And I hope he has that kind of power, and I hope he sets this nation back in order. And I'd like to think that we have another 40 years once he comes back to set it in order. I said I'd like to. Probably don't think so, but I can tell you what, we better pray. That's the reason I'm calling the Solemn September Assembly September 24th. Yes, 24th. And that's Saturday, 9:30 in the morning. Go to prophecyclub.com, gives you all of the details. 9:30 in the morning it starts. Shofars blow precisely at 9:32 a.m. That's the declaration of war against the devil. We're going to pray for America. We're gathering under one name, Jesus, to do one thing, pray for America. And it's going to go on until 9 o'clock that night. He sits his wife, puts his shawl on his shoulders and drapes it down over the front of him and stands beside him. It is beautiful, made for royalty. The whole visit was strictly family. He was asking about our different children and how they were doing and how we were, just a visit. Finally, he stands up and says, well, I've got a lot to do. You know, I'll be back. I'll be back. See, it says it twice. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let a thing be established. So in the audible voice of God here says it twice. It's saying you can count on it. After the limo drives off, I wave my arms trying to tell him he left his shawl. I hear this voice speak from behind me saying, he'll be back. That's 3 times. So when Henry says this has happened, I believe it. Vicky Goforth Parnell again. I'm in bed. The screen lights up on my cell phone. I hear the voice of DJT announcing inbound nuclear weapons have been confirmed. He names targeted states. Now, that says, a confirmation, it says that DJT is going to be in power, and that when he is in power, America is attacked. Terry Bennett said, I saw in the governmental arena that we'll go through a dramatic change in our American government. There will be a time of anarchy and chaos, and for a while we'll have a fractional government, which means basically our government come down to the state level because the military steps in and seizes control of our federal government. What do you call that? You call that an internal revolution. Now, when they step in, apparently there's a lot of bad guys that are arrested and rounded up and handed out justice, because it says that basically our government comes down to a state level because the military steps in and arrests a bunch of the bad guys within our government. You'd call it a coup, but in all honesty, it'll be to help our nation. That's why the military will step in. Barry Wunsch, 2021, says, I woke up at 1:30. I saw on the front cover of the newspaper, Victory, DJT, of course it had his real name there, Victory, DJT sweeps the nation. It was a time for the nation to celebrate like a time after a war. The celebration comes. I saw masses of people coming out into the streets with American flags celebrating. There was still some work to be done. There was still high tension in the air. I was taken to a fence line outside of the White House and saw a huge crowd gathering. The American people came out onto the streets to see what was going on. And I saw people who had conspired and engineered evil surrounded inside the White House, with nowhere to run, nowhere to escape. It was the end for them. I saw military troops supporting for safety enter the White House and other buildings and escort out the evil ones like prisoners of war. Brought out onto the front lawn of the White House, lined up row upon row, in handcuffs and shackles like prisoners of war. Their day was over. The crowd cheered with a great outburst as each group was brought out and put on display. The people in the streets cheered as evil was being dealt with. The patriots were singing anthems and songs of victory in the streets, giving thanks to God. All the corrupted ones were extracted and marched into the streets, surrounded by army, marching them through the streets in humiliation. They were about to face the consequences for all their evil and corruption. They were brought into a portable holding area like a mobile army base for processing to face righteous judges. They were going on trial, facing justice for the highest of consequences, and would get all that they had coming to them for their crimes against humanity. Then I'm taken to the inauguration ceremony for DJT. Surrounded by military, DJT is inaugurated as I don't know if I should say that word, as the P of the United States. There was no showboating. This was serious business. The job was finished, and it was time to heal and rebuild. I saw the public opposed to DJT instantly see the truth. They could no longer deny. They could now see the evil that had been done by these corrupt ones, and that spirit of anarchy in them had just been broken. I saw big military cargo planes, open ramps, and special teams from the United States loaded pallets of legal documents, departing to other nations to go and do likewise to foreign dignitaries awaiting their arrival in other nations. Plans were strategically set in place to arrest and bring foreign corrupt leaders to justice. The world will never be the same. I watched them deploy into nation after nation, and they rejoiced in the streets as justice was served and freedom. Freedom, truth, and righteousness flowed like waters. Those who were left standing had a great reward. It was revival time, a time to heal. So great things are coming. Now remember, Dimitri Dudin was told in 1984, and I've got it in writing here, the fall of America will start with an internal revolution in America started by the communists. And I think that is started by the communists is most likely what the cheating that went on in November of 2020. You know what I'm saying? Then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, and two other countries attack and defeat the Russians. Terry Bennett was told, back in 2001, for a while, we will have a fractional government. Military steps in, seizes control of our government. That's two, and I've got another one here. Jack Rigney said in a dream, I saw armored battalion of tanks, Humvees, and roof-mounted machine guns and armored personnel carriers with cannons go to the Capitol, the Supreme Court, and the White House. Army personnel disarmed all Secret Service men, guards, police guarding those three buildings. Then the Army personnel went back in all three different buildings and took whatever they wanted. He saw the military take temporary control of the nation to arrest the evildoers and the wrongdoers, and that's the way the Constitution would have it done. Under certain circumstances, the military can step in and take temporary control of the nation in order to put things back in order, and that is what I saw. Jason Meeks, 2021. The dream started out. We stopped by an ATM to get some cash for the toll road. I put in a card, got $20 out into the transaction, but I realized I didn't have enough cash. Put the card back in, only this time the receipt was $42 instead of $1.02 for the ATM. Now, the point being that one of the things you'll spot before this happens is the fall of the dollar. As we drove back home, we stopped by a major bank. The television screens were all showing massive arrests. An alert went out. Look, see, I know what you're saying. How do I know this is true? How do I believe this is true? You believe it because you believe the Bible. The Bible says in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let a thing be established. What's this? The fourth person that said the same thing? What does it take to convince you that this is God speaking? This is God, my brothers and sisters. This is the way he talks. He gives a little here, a little there, but when you get different people that don't even know each other, have the same message in a dream, you start saying, okay, this is God. So I'm saying to you, say, this is God. As we drove back home, we stopped by a major bank. The television screens were showing massive arrests. An alert went on my cell phone that DJT was assuming control as the new president. I expected people would be rioting and looting, but they were happy, celebrating in the streets, almost like VJ Day in World War II. The same thing the other guy. Now, the other guy lives in Canada. This guy here lives in Virginia, I think it is. In the dream, a man came to me and started crying, saying how his evil bosses had been arrested and rounded up, telling me he was now in charge of the bank. He was a Christian and had been praying for this for years. As people took to the streets in victory and celebration, we joined in. We jumped on the back of a fire truck to catch a ride in the parade because the streets were so full you could not walk. Everything was amazing, rejoicing. Then I heard a huge explosion. A suitcase nuke had been detonated within the city. I didn't see the explosion, but I saw the shockwaves from it. We jumped off the truck, ran into a restaurant looking for protection, meaning that there are evil people in high places that do have suitcase nukes, which, by the way, this is why I'll recommend you go to EMPShield.com. You get one of these devices here, just red on the red side of the battery, black on the black side of the battery, and the green attaches to the vehicle, the body. And then you peel off the back, stick it under your hood someplace, and it'll protect your car when an EMP from a suitcase nuke goes off. I heard a huge explosion. The suitcase nuke had been detonated within the city. So we jumped and ran into a restaurant for protection. The TV came on and made the sound of an emergency broadcast system like in the 1980s, with that emergency beeping sound that we all remember back in the day, and a voice came across the TV saying that we have tragic news. JB died. Then the vision shifted to KH and NP, plotting how KH would become number 1 and P would become number 2. They could put in place all the bad things they'd planned. Look, this is a whole other person, okay? But she's saying the same thing another person said. This is from Anita Walker. It went silent, and the vision shifted back to the same voice saying, America will not go without a P due to the EF of 2020. DJT is now your number 1 or your president, and the vision ended. I've got to move quickly. AMidnightCry.com says, I woke to a dream that I had in the past. I saw a beautiful sky, white clouds all over. Suddenly, the sky went black. Massive pandemonium, chaos, mayhem, dead bodies, blood all over. I heard the words, it will begin the second half of 2022. I said, Lord, I need a confirmation. The very next day, I got the exact same dream, plus 1. It will begin the second half of 2022. In the second dream, I saw a young man delivering newspapers. They left the newspapers in the bags, and the paper boy would deliver them door to door. But instead of a newspaper, he pulled out a machine gun and started killing people. It was representing civil war. The young man delivering the good news of the newspapers of the media now had turned on his own country and people. Then on December 30th of 2021, the Lord gave me the same dream, he says, that I'd given me on the 26th and 27th. Beautiful blue sky, clouds, it flips and becomes black mayhem, pandemonium, dead bodies. It begins the second half of 2022. God has been very patient with us all day long. He has been stretching forth his hand to a stubborn, rebellious people, saying, this is the way, walk ye in it, but America would not. I'm going to show you something you've never seen or tasted before. I'm doing this impromptu. I just went out to my own bread machine, And I pulled this out. This is a loaf I made Saturday. This is my famous raisin, cinnamon, vanilla. This new loaf, the whole loaf would weigh about 3 pounds. Of course, I've already eaten about half of it. But I want to show you why you have never tasted this. Each one of these slices, you can see how thick it is. One of these slices is a meal. You eat one of these in the morning, one in the afternoon, and not only are you satisfied, you're really satisfied. You're really happy. Cinnamon, raisin, vanilla, and yes, at josephkitchen.com, you can get the recipe. This is an upgraded recipe that I plan to be putting out here as soon as I get a chance. But if you look close, those are raisins, cinnamon, and vanilla all whipped together. You put that into a toaster, put a little bit of butter on that, and, well, it doesn't last long at church. As a matter of fact, they pass by all of the nice donuts and all of the other sweet garbage to get something that's really good for them. Now, what I would suggest you do is start making your own bread, whether you've already got Joseph's Kitchen or whether you haven't, get it. Now, here's what you do. You go to josephskitchen.com. 2 things. 1, you order a machine package. That's the mechanicals to make it. In other words, the grinder that takes the wheat berries, turns it into flour, which you put into the bread machine with 6 other ingredients. Push a button. 2 hours and 20 minutes later, you have a nice hot loaf of whole wheat bread. Won't look like this because this one has raisin, cinnamon, and honey in it. Anyway, extra honey. And the next thing you want to do is decide how much food you want to have. You want to have 6 people 1 year, 4 people 1 year, 2 people 1 year, or just enough for one person. All of that is at the price of around $1,000 per person. Get you some homemade whole wheat bread. Why have you never tasted this? Because the grocery stores cannot and will never be able to offer this, because in about 7 to 10 days after you break the wheat berry, it starts going bad. Now, I know that I'm going to have to eat this in the next 7 to 10 days, but I also know it's probably not going to last more than 3 or 4 days. As a matter of fact, it's one of the best things I've ever eaten in my life, and I can't guarantee this. I can't say it legally, but let's put it this way. I've been taken off of my I've been taken off of my high blood pressure pills, and the doctor said that I have low cholesterol now, cut my cholesterol pill in half. And the only thing I can say is over the last year, I started eating whole wheat bread. So there it is, whole wheat bread. josephskitchen.com. CornerstoneAssetMetals.com is where I'll send you if you're thinking about getting gold or silver. I think everybody should have at least a fistful of gold and a fistful of silver, because there could be a time when you pull up to get gasoline and they might not want to take your loaf of bread, but you pull out a gold coin or a silver coin, and you're probably able to get anything you want, even if the credit cards are down, even if the dollars are worthless. CornerstoneAssetMetals.com. CornerstoneAssetMetals.com.